So you will
No, sorry. We'll do it next week. Next week.
Because we lost about 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's about quite a lot of people coming up. It's just for the speakers that might have
Okay. Ready to go, always.
a second. Just remember this being nice and close to the microphone. Nice and close. Ready in the truck? Okay, so. Oh, hang on, let's just get these people. Guys, we need to sit down, otherwise we're covering TV shot. Okay, we can go.
Okay. Are we ready? Yes. Thank you so much. And welcome to this press conference with the Interfaith Liaison Committee to the UNFCCC. We are happy to see you here. I'm Henrik Grape from World Council of Churches and co-chair together with Valerian Bernard from the Interfaith Liaison Committee. We see this COP as there are worrying trends, including rising level of nationalism that we see that is not very productive to the climate discussions. We see questioning of multilateralism that is so important to reach agreement on climate justice work, and we are worried about it. We also see that rich nations are promising finance and not really delivering on it and sort of shuffle the ODA from one account to another. All this also comes to the question of values, the question of ethics that is lying behind this. And we need to see that the moral interest that also stems from many of the faith communities is very important to include this to actually achieve something that we are in need for to overcome the climate challenges. And in most faiths, there is a tradition of protecting the vulnerable and of caring for creation or Mother Earth or environment or whatever we name them in different traditions. We are on the same page on this work as well. And I think that faith tradition also have the long-term understanding of our life together in contradiction to a very short-term way of thinking of economy and development. So with no further ado, I would like to introduce Sister Jayanti from the Brahma Kumaris to start her 2 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you. And thanks for the invitation to be here with all of you. I'd like to address the situation from a non-physical perspective, since we are all members of committed members and office holders in some cases for faith organizations. I thought I'd take it from a very different perspective. I see a lot of depression, I see a lot of heaviness, I also feel the sense of loss of hope. And I think that what we can do further here and now, but also for COP30, is to be able to find ways to be able to uplift ourselves and also the atmosphere around us. Because when we can be in a peaceful state of mind, then we can be more creative, but also we can be more collaborative. I know that when we have an adversarial approach, then that's not helpful either for us or for any negotiators or for the world in large. And so I would suggest that just as we've had more and more recognition of the value of faith-based organizations participating in the civil process, I think that we should continue that, but I hope that on the basis of our commitment to our faith, but also our understanding of the need for respect for nature and respect for human life, we can come up with some program that we can do through the year so that by the time we're in next COP, then we're going to be able to work together with a very focused goal and be able to achieve something for human lives, but also for the planet. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sister Jainti. I will give the floor to Ronilso Pacheco, a theologian, director of the Institute of Studies of Religion in Brazil, and also a pastor. Please, go ahead.
Thank you. There is more than 50 years, ISE, Institute of Religion Studies, is one of the most important institutions in Brazil that look at the religion, how religion is so important to understand their own Brazilian society and how religion cross different issues in Brazil. ISE is a secular institution, but this institution completely commitment with this importance of religion in Brazil. That's why I'm mostly thinking about the COP30. We are organizing different religious groups, leadership, and how the religion can help us realize the better COP, and how religion can help us to have more participation of civil society in this moment in COP30 in Brazil. And now, ISE make part of Tapiri in the religious ecumenical is a huge network, specifically the several religious groups in Amazon region, and we are together with this network to preparing and organizing and inspiring different religious groups in Brazil to think together COP30 and how we can contribute as religion to make this better. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I hope you take notes so you can have good questions. I will now invite Lindsay Fielder Cook, a representative for climate change from the Quaker United Nations office, living in Germany. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Henrik. I speak from the tradition of a peace church. Peace and nonviolent teachings are in all world religions if we listen. We are told that this COP29 is a peace COP and a finance COP, with climate scientists reminding us of the rapidly closing window of opportunity to secure a livable and sustainable world. I will briefly address the connection between peace and finance, and to consider if, in this COP, we too often miss the obvious. For example, every COP29 and this COP as well seek to increase mitigation ambition, again noting our science colleagues' rapidly closing window of opportunity. Yet in these rooms, nearly every wealthy fossil fuel economy country plans to increase oil and gas extraction and production, not even cap, but increase. And the COP president refers to fossil fuels as a divine gift. Save some brave voices, champions of Colombia leading the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty, and the UK commitment to no new oil and gas licenses. But for peace and freedom, we need to ask another obvious question. What really makes us safe? Currently, inside this COP, negotiators focus on a new collective quantified goal, and this comes as the promised 100 billion by 2020 arrived several years late and primarily was in loans that can deepen the debt crisis. An outside war is spreading and finance from military multiplies. Just briefly, this peace COP, with emissions which are not required to be reported by our countries, the global military carbon footprint is estimated to be 5.5% of total global emissions. There is more than the combined annual emissions of 54 nations in the African continent, and twice as much emissions as civilian aviation. This estimate does not include the conflict-related emissions from Gaza, Ukraine, or post-9/11 wars. And for example, Israel has dropped more bombs on 2 million people in Gaza in less than a year than were dropped by allies on Germany during World War II. And then finally, a COP of peace and finance. In 2023, the world spent 2.4 trillion on military. If current trends continue between 2024 and 2030, we can expect to see another 17 trillion spent on global military. And so we ask, as faith-based communities, what really makes us safe, and where might we find finance? Finance to bring us safety that funds sustainable energy, sustainable economics, sustainable agricultural transitions that give us this chance to face the rapidly closing window of opportunity for a livable and sustainable world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. I will give the floor to Karine Jocelyn Vedland, who is a youth climate activist, if that is okay to say. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Henrik. So this year we have experienced extreme situations in Brazil. The highest number of climate displaced people in Brazil's recent history. Almost 95% of the cities in Rio Grande do Sul, the state where I live, have been affected by floods, and also a drought that has affected 55% of their territory. Also, 11 million hectares burned between January to August this year. Almost the whole country covered in smoke, extreme and intense weather events. The economic loss and damage are enormous and are all over the media, but what about the non-economic loss and damage that cannot be repaired? How many details of the most diverse forms of life indigenous populations affected, not only in loss of land, but also culture, traditions, and relationships with nature and are affected. When the whole country went up in smoke, we learned that cities are already gray enough and that we need a collective conscience to care for our common home. Climate change disproportionality affects the livelihoods of the poorest and most vulnerable around the world. As women and girls living in poverty, youth, children, people with disabilities, and indigenous people. Climate change is a justice issue. We young people feel these events. We saw our country burn and be flooded in a short time. Collectives and thousands of volunteers, including many young people, supported the restoration of the state in southern Brazil. In the context of my country, with an intercultural richness of more than 3,000 native peoples and more than 2,017 languages, it is important to highlight that 7 out of 10 young people understand that the seriousness of climate change is a global warming and are taking action. For 81% of young Brazilians, climate change is not a natural event, but a direct consequence of human actions on the planet. We have seen that the climate emergence provokes climate anxiety or eco-anxiety, especially in young people, and facing the climate emergence is everyone's task. The sixth assessment report on the Governmental Panel of Climate Change, IPCC, only reaffirms the catastrophic efforts of global warming of more than 1.5 degrees. We still do not know who will pay the bill. We do not yet know who will foot the bill for hottest year of the century and first year in which the planet most likely will reach 1.5 degrees. But I am hopeful that will be a COP that goes beyond words and empty promises and arrives at sustainable and fair finance structure with coherent actions and socio-environmental justice for all forms of life. We see now the COP is slow process. How are we going to deal with all the problems that I bring here? I am here to tell the urgency we live and this reality that we, like the government, take ambitious actions. Only then there will be climate justice. And let COP30 be a historic opportunity for Brazil to reaffirm its leadership role in negotiations on climate change.
I'm sorry to say, but we have to wrap up there, if that's okay.
So, thank you.
You can say your last meaning, that's fine. Your last sentence, that's good.
Okay, so then may the COP be a space for solutions, and may we be part of the solution. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's just to give space to everyone and to give every kind of perspective. I would like to give the floor to Kriti Sheracha from is a climate action advisor to Dan Church Aid, and please try to keep the time. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Henrik. Good afternoon and namaste to all. Let me start by recapping the last week. There has been a lot of unfinished agenda in this COP, so many expectations haven't been met. The negotiation hurdles are largely guided by geopolitical situations, and like my esteemed panelists have shared, we do have a draft text on NCQG, but it is not yet good in terms of quality or quantity. So that is there, and ministers are taking it up at the moment. There are some various good points as well. For example, there is a fast-tracked adaptation of centralized carbon trading mechanism on day one of the summit. There have been few good promises in the adaptation text that haven't been materialized but are still in negotiation. And I came running from the loss and damage negotiation room to attend, and there are also things are not looking very bright. But despite all of this, I think despite all the deadlocks and frustration, I agree with my esteemed panelist here that this is the time for hope. This is the time for us to put forth all our energy, all our efforts in our own capacities to pray to have something definite when it comes to finance in the COP that will lead us to Brazil. I think this is the time for us to do our very best in our own capacities to put forth the key demands of the most vulnerable communities, most vulnerable nations, to put them forth so that our negotiators can take it up and to have as much positivity as we need so that we can share the energy, the positivity, and the need for climate change protection, adaptation, mitigation, as well as conservation to our negotiators and leaders. I'd like to end with the fact that, our faith has always taught us to be compassionate, to have prioritized the nature and our ecological systems the most. So I'd like to end with a hymn that summarizes to this. May all sentient beings be at peace. May no one suffer any illness. May all witness auspiciousness, and may there be no suffering. Let there be peace and compassion and more climate action. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I give the floor to Reverend Mata Havea, who's a moderator for the United Church in Australia, the Synod of North and West, North, South Wales and Australian Capital Territory. Please take the floor.
Thank you. Malo lele and greetings to all of you in the mighty name of God. As I've been introduced, I am the moderator of the Uniting Church in Australia, the third largest Christian denomination in Australia. But I'm also a daughter of the Pacific, a first-generation Tongan-born woman. I'm really humbled to be here at COP 29. I'm here for the first time. As a church, we've always been committed to caring for God's creation and ensuring that climate justice is something that we own and try to live out, not just in word, but in action. Here at COP, there are a lot of powerful people in the room, and there are a lot of powerful organizations in the room. Part of my calling as a woman of faith is actually to remind world leaders and big corporations, organizations, of those that are most impacted, those that are on the front line of the climate injustices that's happening across the world. As a woman that was born in the Pacific, I see firsthand the rising costs, the rising sea levels that are swallowing my island home. I'm also, as a leader of the church in a powerful country like Australia, I'm also seeing the struggles of those that are struggling to pay the rent or struggling with the rising heat. So 1.5 degrees is something I want to continue to empower our leaders to commit to. Because if we don't, we are actually saying that we are willing to lose the Pacific. And so I'm here as a woman of faith, standing in solidarity with my brothers and sisters here of faith before you to say, do not remember the most vulnerable in our countries and in our world that are directly impacted by climate injustices. So in a small way, I want to offer my voice and my action as a Uniting Church leader into this conversation, not just today, but hopefully continuing in COP to come. Just finally, I'd like to say that I'm really excited that Brazil is hosting the next COP30, and with a focus of Indigenous, with Indigenous voices, because as a woman, First Nations, Indigenous people in Australia, Indigenous people of the Pacific, they've navigated their way in sustainable living for generations. Australian First Nations is the oldest living culture in the world. And so to focus on Indigenous perspectives for the next COP and the vulnerable in our community, I'm really excited about that. God bless you all and thank you for the opportunity. Malo apito.
Thank you so much. We have some minutes over for questions, and as you can see, we are trying to cover from a gender perspective. It's a week on the panel on the genders this time, but on the good way, so to say, when we see that the gender is sort of pushed back in the discussion as well. We also try to cover all the different parts of the world, different religion, different faiths, and also Indigenous and youth is something that is really important for us as the Interfaith. So please, the floor is open for questions. Yes, we have one there. If you can introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Crystal and I'm the observer. So I'm from China and I study in Thailand right now. So my question is, what strategies does the WCC advocate to balance climate mitigation with the needs to protect biodiversity and virtual ecosystems?
Okay, I think we can broaden the question not to WCC, to anyone in the panel, because I think I'm the only WCC person here. So it's an interfaith liaison committee. So anyone opting for answering the question? From your perspective, yeah. Sister Yangti?
I'm sure that when there's silence, meditation, or prayer, it creates that awareness of the oneness with nature and the beauty and truth of nature. And there's a link with the whole of creation. And so my hope is that as the number of people who are interested in prayer and meditations rising continually, since COVID times, we've seen a huge leap forward in people turning to that path of introspection. And so I feel that we're reaching a point of critical mass where people will truly understand this, and I think our collective power can bring about change in the right direction.
Thank you. Lindsay, you want to?
Your question was how to protect biodiversity in mitigation. Am I correct? So I think that you would find in the faith-based voices as well, we would ask for honesty in transforming root causes, not trying to use carbon markets or large-scale carbon dioxide removal, which is a false solution and would not actually transform the root causes. We would be protecting nature rather than trying to maintain the root causes of fossil fuels, et cetera, industrial agriculture. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other question? Yes, we have one in the back.
Hi, Willard Metzger from Citizens for Public Justice, part of the Civil Society Delegation for Canada. And I applaud the religious organizations' desire to increase the pressure on international conversations here. But I guess my question is, if I look at United States, I look at Canada, I really see the religious community that really props up an electorate that allows governments to come into power that really do not have any commitment to climate justice. So I'm wondering how will the faith communities look inward as well to change the attitudes of your own communities?
Well, as the moderator, I take the freedom just to start to answer that question. I will say that there are many kind of movements also inside Canada, inside US, that don't have the kind of public narrative when it comes to being official for the churches or for the faith communities, but they are. And I think you can go all around the world and you see that faith communities are active on climate justice. But as you say, they need to come more into the front to understand this discussion. And I think that we often think of this as a part of a very technical political decision. But we see now that it's so much more of a lifestyle transformation that is needed. And then you need the faith communities to come into this. And that is a part of the ILC to really contribute to that kind of discussion. So please, anyone else who want to? Yep. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to give a small example from Nepal. In Nepal, many indigenous communities and cultural groups, they worship forests as their deity. So they have been very closely associated with forest for their livelihood, and they worship them as their deity, and they are very much involved in conservation, especially the women of those groups. And the whole system is developed around how do you protect the forest, how do you protect the natural resources, and thrive with it. So I think that is an small example that kind of demonstrates the whole socio-political status of Nepal. So many of the community forestry are saved, and I think we are one of the countries that have 45% of our total land into forestry and led by the community members. And that pressures the government to have enabling policies, environments in place, and it all starts with the community's faith, their learnings and all that. And I think that example is something that is there in all parts of the world and something that we can use to pressurize the governments that you just mentioned about, to maybe add more to what Sir Henrik said, to look inwards and then pressurize with the good examples that can be scaled up. Thank you.
I will give 20 seconds to Ronilse just to end that.
Yeah. What I can see in Brazil is definitely the religions is very important to help the grassroots people change attitude and the awareness about the climate change. One of the most important projects that Israel has is Faith in the Climate. And this project very, very successful and help the people in the grassroots and community and territory change his awareness and mindset about the role and careful about the earth, about the land, about the territory. So this movement may be pressure the government and the power of decision to what is possible to do to better in the country.
To end you there. I'm sorry, but our time is up. So you can pick anyone. So if you want more comments, thank you so much for coming here. Sorry.